Some childhood memories fade over time. The details blur, the fear softens, and you convince yourself it wasn't as bad as you remember. But there are some things, some faces that never leave you. This is the story of Giggles the clown, and the birthday party that ruined birthdays forever. I was 7 years old when my parents hired a clown for my birthday party. It was 1997, and clown entertainment was still somewhat normal, still trusted. My mom found him in the classified section of the local newspaper, a small ad that read, "Giggles the clown. Parties, events, guaranteed smiles." The price was cheap, too cheap, my dad joked, but we were on a budget that year. He arrived 30 minutes late on a Saturday afternoon in June. I remember watching from the living room window as a white van pulled up to our house. It was old, with rusted wheel wells and a faded circus logo on the side, something that might have been colorful once but had been beaten down by years of sun and neglect. The van door slid open, and out stepped Giggles. His costume was elaborate: oversized polka dot suit, massive red shoes, rainbow wig that sat slightly crooked on his head. But it was his face that made me pause. The makeup was thick and cracked, applied over what looked like several days of wear. His smile was painted on with red lipstick that extended far beyond his natural mouth, creating an unnaturally wide grin. But beneath the paint, I could see his real expression, a deep, fixed frown that the makeup couldn't quite hide. My parents greeted him enthusiastically. My mom shook his gloved hand. My dad pointed him toward the backyard where a dozen kids from my class were already running around, hyped up on cake and anticipation. Giggles nodded slowly and walked past me. As he did, his eyes pale gray, almost colorless, locked onto mine. He didn't blink, not once. The performance began. He did the standard clown routine: balloon animals, magic tricks, exaggerated physical comedy. The other kids laughed and clapped, but I watched his eyes. They never matched the performance. While his body bounced and gestured, his eyes remained still, scanning the crowd, lingering on each child for too long, as if memorizing faces. When he made me a balloon animal, a misshapen dog, he leaned in close. His breath smelled like cigarettes and something sour. He whispered, "You're the birthday boy. You're special." His voice was hoarse, strained, like he wasn't used to speaking. I took the balloon and backed away. The party ended around 4 p.m. Parents arrived to pick up their kids. The yard emptied. My mom handed Giggles a check. He stared at it for a long time before folding it carefully and putting it in his pocket. Then he just stood there. My mom thanked him again, hinting it was time to go. He didn't move. "The party's over," my dad said, more firmly this time. Giggles turned his head toward my dad, not his body, just his head, in a slow, mechanical rotation. "I know," he said quietly. "So, you can go now," my dad continued, his tone shifting. Giggles looked back at our house, then at me. "I like it here." My dad stepped forward, positioning himself between Giggles and the house. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave now." For a moment, nothing happened. Giggles stood perfectly still, that painted smile frozen on his face, his real eyes cold and unreadable. Then, without a word, he turned and walked toward his van. But he didn't get in. He stood beside it, one hand resting on the driver's side door, staring at our house. My dad watched him for a few minutes before going inside and calling the non-emergency police line. By the time an officer arrived 20 minutes later, Giggles was gone. That night, I woke up to a sound I couldn't identify at first: a soft, rhythmic tapping. I sat up in bed, trying to locate the source. Then I saw it. My bedroom window. Someone was tapping on the glass from outside. I should have screamed. I should have run to my parents' room, but fear locked me in place. Slowly, I turned my head toward the window. Pressed against the pane was a white-gloved hand, fingers spread wide. And above it, illuminated by the moonlight, was Giggles's face. That same painted smile. Those same unblinking eyes. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. Then his hand moved, dragging down the glass with a squeak that made my skin crawl. I finally found my voice and screamed. My parents burst into the room. My dad ran outside with a baseball bat, but Giggles was gone. The only evidence he'd been there was a smudged handprint on the window and a single red balloon tied to our mailbox. The police came again. They took a report. They told us to call immediately if we saw him again. But there wasn't much they could do without a real name or address. The phone number on the newspaper ad was disconnected. For the next 3 weeks, we found balloon animals on our doorstep every morning. Each one was more elaborate than the last. A giraffe, a sword, a flower. They appeared overnight, always between the hours when we went to bed and when we woke up. My dad installed motion sensor lights. They never triggered. The final balloon animal arrived on a Sunday morning. My mom found it first. She didn't call me outside to see it. She just brought my dad out, and I watched from the window as both their faces went pale. Later, my dad told me what it was. It was shaped like a boy. A balloon boy with brown hair, wearing a striped shirt and shorts, exactly what I'd worn to my birthday party. The details were disturbingly accurate. It even had a small red mark on the left knee, matching a scar I'd gotten from a bike accident the previous summer. Attached to it was a note, written in shaky handwriting. "See you at your next party." We moved 2 months later. My parents told relatives it was for my dad's job, but I knew the truth. We packed up in the middle of the night and drove 6 hours to a new city. We didn't leave a forwarding address. I'm 31 years old now. I've never celebrated another birthday. No parties, no cakes, no gatherings. Every year on June 14th, I stay inside, doors locked, blinds drawn. And every year, I wonder if he's still out there, still looking, still waiting for the next party. Some entertainers bring joy. Others bring something far worse. If you're hiring a clown for your child's party, maybe skip the classifieds. Because some smiles aren't meant to be trusted. Public transportation has a way of attracting strange people. Late-night buses especially. You learn to keep your head down, avoid eye contact, and trust your instincts. But sometimes, something gets on that bus that isn't just strange, it's wrong. I worked the closing shift at a grocery store in a small town outside Dayton, Ohio. My shift ended at 11:30 p.m., and I'd walk 3 blocks to catch the 11:47 bus that took me home. The route was dead at that hour, just me, the driver, and occasionally a couple of third-shift factory workers heading in. It was a Thursday in October. The air had that cold bite that meant winter was coming soon. I stood at the bus stop under a flickering streetlight, scrolling through my phone, when the bus pulled up. I climbed aboard, tapped my card, and took my usual seat 4th row from the front, window side. The bus pulled away from the curb, and I settled in for the 20-minute ride. That's when I heard the hydraulic hiss of the doors opening again. I looked up. We'd stopped at the next stop, the one near the abandoned fairgrounds that had been closed for 5 years. A clown got on. Full costume, rainbow wig, white face paint with bright red lips and exaggerated blue eye makeup, oversized yellow suit with pom-pom buttons, giant red shoes that squeaked against the rubber floor. At first, I assumed it was someone coming from a Halloween event, even though Halloween was still 2 weeks away. The driver didn't react, just waited for the clown to tap his card before closing the doors and continuing the route. The clown walked down the aisle. I expected him to sit near the back, most people did, but he stopped 3 rows behind me. I heard the seat creak as he sat down. Then nothing. No rustling, no phone sounds, no movement at all. I glanced at the window, using the reflection to see behind me. The clown was sitting perfectly upright, hands folded in his lap, staring directly at the back of my head. His painted smile was frozen. His eyes, pale and unblinking, didn't waver. I told myself I was being paranoid. Just a weird guy in a costume. Ignore it. But every time I checked the reflection, he was still staring. Not at his phone. Not out the window. At me. 5 minutes passed. My stop was coming up. I reached up and pulled the cord to signal the driver. The bell dinged. The bus began to slow. I stood up, gripping my bag, and glanced back as I moved toward the front. The clown stood up too. My heart kicked into a higher gear. Maybe he was getting off at the same stop. It was a public bus. People got off at the same stops all the time, but something about the way he moved, slow, deliberate, his eyes never leaving me, made my skin crawl. The bus stopped. The doors hissed open. I stepped out onto the sidewalk and started walking toward my apartment, trying to stay calm. Then I heard it. The wet slap of oversized shoes on pavement. I glanced back. The clown was following me, about 15 feet behind, matching my pace exactly. His arms swung stiffly at his sides. That painted smile never changed. I walked faster. So did he. The squeaking of his shoes kept rhythm with my heartbeat. My apartment was still 4 blocks away. The street was empty. No cars, no open businesses, just me and him. I spotted a 24-hour laundromat on the next block, lights on, someone visible inside. I broke into a jog and pushed through the door, the bell above jingling. An older woman folding towels looked up at me, startled. "You okay, honey?" she asked. I turned back toward the window. The clown was standing directly outside, under the streetlight, staring at me through the glass. He didn't move, didn't try to come in, just stood there. "Can you call the police?" I said, my voice shaking. She saw him, and her expression changed. She picked up the phone behind the counter and dialed. For 40 minutes, the clown stood outside. The woman, her name was Denise, stayed with me, watching him through the window. He didn't move an inch. Cars passed by. He didn't react. A couple walked past on the other side of the street. He didn't turn his head. His eyes stayed locked on me. When the police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing, I felt a wave of relief. 2 officers got out and approached the laundromat. I pointed toward the streetlight. The clown was gone. The officers searched the area. They checked the alley, the side streets, behind the dumpsters. Nothing. They took my statement, told me to call if I saw him again, and offered to escort me home. I accepted. I didn't take the bus for 2 weeks. I took cabs, even though I couldn't afford it. I changed my route. I started carrying pepper spray. 3 days after the incident, I came home from work and found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No address, no stamp, just my first name written on the front in shaky handwriting. Inside was a Polaroid photo. It was me, asleep in my bed. The photo was taken from inside my bedroom, from the foot of the bed, looking down at me. My blankets were pulled up to my chin. My face was peaceful, unaware. In the bottom right corner of the photo, barely visible in the darkness, was a white face with painted features. He'd been inside my apartment. I moved out the next day, stayed with a friend, filed a police report. They dusted for prints, found nothing useful. I broke my lease, found a new place across town, and installed 3 deadbolts. That was 8 months ago. I still don't take the bus. I still check my locks 5 times before bed. And every time I see someone in a costume, any costume, my chest tightens and I have to remind myself to breathe. Not everyone who watches you is harmless. Sometimes, the scariest thing isn't what happens, it's knowing someone got close enough to make it happen. There are places you visit for the novelty, the weirdness, the story you'll tell later. But some places aren't just weird, they're wrong. And once you've stayed there, the story changes. It becomes a warning. My girlfriend Rachel and I were driving cross-country from Seattle to Denver. It was one of those spontaneous trips, quit our jobs, packed the car, figured we'd find ourselves, or whatever people say. We'd been on the road for 4 days when Rachel pulled up a list of roadside attractions. "Oh my God, we have to stop here," she said, showing me her phone. It was the Clown Motel in Tonopah, Nevada. A gimmick destination. Every room decorated with clown memorabilia, right next to a historic cemetery. The reviews were mixed. Some people thought it was hilarious. Others said it was deeply unsettling. Rachel loved horror stuff, so she was sold. "Come on, it'll be funny," she said. "We'll take creepy photos, laugh about it, and have a good story." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We pulled into Tonopah around 9 p.m. The town was small, almost deserted. The motel sat at the edge of the main street, a 2-story building with a giant clown sign out front. The paint was faded, the neon flickering. Behind the motel, I could see the silhouettes of old gravestones in the cemetery. The front desk clerk was a man in his 60s with thinning gray hair and the deadest eyes I'd ever seen. He didn't smile, didn't make small talk, just asked if we had a reservation. Rachel gave him our confirmation number. He handed us a key, an actual metal key, not a key card, and pointed down the hallway. Room 217, 2nd floor, checkouts at 11. We grabbed our bags and headed upstairs. The hallway walls were covered in framed photos of clowns, old circus posters, black and white photos of performers, paintings of clown faces. The carpet was stained and smelled faintly of mildew. Rachel unlocked the door to 217. We stepped inside and flipped on the light. The room was worse than the photos online. Dozens of clown dolls lined the shelves along the walls. Some were vintage porcelain with cracked faces. Others were cheap plastic toys with faded paint. Their glass eyes reflected the overhead light, creating tiny pinpricks of brightness in the dim room. Paintings of clowns hung on every available wall space, some smiling, some sad, some with expressions that didn't fit either category. The bedspread had a clown pattern. The lampshades had clown illustrations. Even the shower curtain in the bathroom had a circus theme. "This is amazing," Rachel said, pulling out her phone to take pictures. I forced a smile. Something about the room felt off. It wasn't just the clown theme, it was the smell, a mix of stale flowers and something chemical, like old cleaning products that had soaked into the carpet over decades. We went to dinner at the only open restaurant in town, then came back to the motel around 11 p.m. Rachel fell asleep almost immediately. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore the dolls. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to music. It was faint, tinny, like an old music box, a circus melody, off-key and slow. I sat up, trying to locate the source. Rachel was still asleep beside me. I checked my phone, no apps running. I got up and searched the room. No music box, no hidden speaker, nothing. But the music continued. I stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. That's when I noticed the dolls. I was certain, absolutely certain, that the one sitting on the nightstand had been facing the wall when we went to bed. Now it was facing the bed, staring directly at us. I walked over and turned it back around. My hands were shaking. I checked the other dolls. Several of them seemed different. Angles shifted. Positions changed. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I just didn't remember correctly. Then Rachel woke up. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. "The music?" She nodded, sitting up. Her eyes were wide, scanning the room. Then she grabbed my arm. "Look," she pointed to the corner of the room. The largest doll, a 3-foot-tall clown in a red and white suit, had been sitting on a chair when we arrived. Now it was on the floor, 3 feet closer to the bed. "We need to leave," I said. We threw our stuff into our bags, not bothering to fold anything. I unlocked the door and yanked it open. The hallway was dark. The lights had been on when we went to bed. We ran down the stairs. Through the lobby, the desk clerk was gone, and out to the car. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. Rachel turned around in her seat, staring at the motel as we drove away. "All the lights are off," she said. "Except ours." I looked in the rearview mirror. She was right. Room 217 was the only lit window in the entire building, and standing in the window, silhouetted against the light, was a figure. A tall figure in a clown costume, waving slowly. We drove through the night without stopping. When we got to Denver, Rachel developed the photos from the trip at a print shop. Most of them were normal landscapes, diners, roadside attractions, but there was one we didn't take. It was a close-up photo of us sleeping in the motel bed, shot from the foot of the bed, looking down. The angle was low, as if someone had been kneeling on the floor. In the bottom corner, partially visible, was a white-gloved hand. We never figured out who took it. We never went back. And we never talk about that night unless we've had a few drinks and someone asks about our worst travel experience. Even then, we don't tell the whole story. Some places are designed to scare you. Others are just waiting. If you ever find yourself at the Clown Motel, maybe skip room 217. Security work is mostly boring. Hours of watching empty hallways on grainy monitors. But every once in a while, you see something that doesn't make sense. Something that shouldn't be there, and when you see it, you start questioning everything. I worked security at Westfield Plaza, a mid-sized shopping mall in the suburbs. The overnight shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My job was to monitor the camera feeds from a small office near the back loading dock and do hourly patrols with my partner, a guy named Marcus who'd been doing this for 15 years. It was boring work. Most nights, nothing happened. The mall closed at 9 p.m. The cleaning crew finished by 11, and after that, it was just empty corridors and the hum of HVAC systems. I'd watch Netflix on my phone between camera checks, fight to stay awake, and count down the hours until my shift ended. One night in early March, around 1:30 a.m., I was flipping through the camera feeds when I saw movement on camera 14. It covered the old food court, an area that had been closed for renovations for the past 2 months. The tables and chairs were gone, the vendor stalls were boarded up, and the space was supposed to be completely empty. But someone was standing there. I leaned closer to the monitor. It was a clown, full costume, rainbow wig, white face paint, oversized suit, standing perfectly still in the center of the frame, staring directly at the camera. "Marcus," I called over my shoulder. "You seeing this?" He rolled his chair over and looked at the screen. "The hell?" "Camera 14, food court." He squinted. "I don't see anything." "Right there," I said, pointing at the screen. The clown was still there, clear as day. Marcus looked at me, then back at the screen. "Man, I don't see shit. You feeling okay?" I stared at him. "You're telling me you don't see a clown standing in the middle of the food court?" "There's nothing there." I looked back at the monitor. The clown was still there, still staring. "I'm gonna check it out," Marcus said, standing up and grabbing his flashlight. "Probably just a shadow or something messing with the camera." I watched him leave the office, then switch to camera 12, which covered the hallway leading to the food court. I saw his flashlight beam bouncing off the walls as he walked. Camera 13. Closer now. Then camera 14. Marcus stepped into the food court, sweeping his flashlight across the empty space. On my monitor, the clown was still there, standing 3 feet behind Marcus. Its hand was raised, as if reaching toward his shoulder. "Marcus!" I shouted into the radio. "Behind you!" His voice crackled back. "Behind me what? There's nothing here." "There's a clown right behind you." I watched him spin around, flashlight swinging. On the camera feed, the clown didn't move. It just stood there, hand still raised, staring at the camera. "Dude, there's nobody here," Marcus said. "I'm looking right at it. Empty room." I felt my chest tighten. "I'm watching you on the camera right now. It's standing right behind you." Marcus walked around the entire food court, checking every corner, every shadow. The whole time, on my screen, the clown followed him, staying just outside his line of sight. When Marcus looked left, the clown was on his right. When he turned around, it was behind him again. After 10 minutes, Marcus came back to the office. I was still staring at the monitor. The clown was gone. "Nothing there," Marcus said, slightly out of breath. "Maybe you need some coffee." "Let's check the recording," I said. We pulled up the footage from camera 14, starting at 1:30 a.m. We watched the empty food court. No clown. No movement. Just an empty room. "See?" Marcus said. "Nothing, but I'd seen it. With my own eyes. On that screen." "I'm not crazy," I said. Marcus shrugged. "Didn't say you were, but maybe you need a break." I didn't take a break. I stayed in that office, watching the feeds, replaying the footage over and over. Nothing. I reported it to mall management the next day. They dismissed it. "Stress," they said. "Long hours, night shifts. It happens." They suggested I take a few days off. I quit 2 days later. But before I left, I did something. I went through every camera feed from that night, all 48 cameras. I checked every single one, minute by minute, from midnight to 3 a.m. On every single camera, at some point during that window, the clown appeared. On camera 3, outside the main entrance, it stood behind the glass doors at 12:47 a.m. On camera 19, in the parking garage, it was visible in the background at 1:15 a.m. On camera 31, near the restrooms, it stood in the corner at 2:08 a.m. Every time, it was staring directly at the camera. And every time, when I cross-referenced the footage with patrol logs, nobody physically present saw anything. I copied the footage onto a USB drive. I still have it. I've shown it to people. Half of them see the clown. Half of them see nothing. There's no pattern, no common factor between the people who see it and those who don't. I don't work security anymore. I don't know if the clown is still there. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if it was ever really on the cameras or if it was somewhere else entirely. Sometimes, what you see isn't what's there. And sometimes, what's there isn't meant to be seen by everyone. If you work late nights, check your cameras carefully. You might be the only one who sees it. Every town has its urban legends. The stories teenagers tell each other to scare their friends. Most of them are bullshit, exaggerations, misunderstandings turned into myths. But some of them are real. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and nothing exciting ever happens. One of the few landmarks we had was an old pedestrian bridge that crossed over the interstate. It was built in the 72nds, rusted and cracked, mostly used by homeless people to get from one side of town to the other without walking the long way around. When I was in high school, there was a rumor about a man who lived under that bridge. The story was that he dressed like a clown, that he'd lost his mind years ago after his family died in a car accident, and that he stayed under the bridge because he couldn't face the world anymore. Most people dismissed it as an urban legend, something made up to keep kids from hanging around the homeless camp below. But one night, during the summer after junior year, my friends Jake and Connor and I decided to find out. We'd been drinking in Connor's basement, the kind of cheap beer that tasted like metal, and someone brought up the clown story. Jake said it was bullshit. Connor said his older brother had seen the guy once. I said we should go check. It was past midnight when we parked near the bridge and climbed down the embankment. We used our phone flashlights to navigate through the weeds and trash. The sound of the interstate above was constant, a low hum of trucks and cars that drowned out almost everything else. At the bottom, we found the camp. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't just tarps and sleeping bags. It was theatrical. Red fabric was draped between the concrete support beams, hanging like curtains in a circus tent. There was a deflated kiddie pool filled with stagnant, murky water. Trash bags stuffed with something we couldn't identify, and dolls. Dozens of dolls, hanging from ropes at different heights, spinning slowly in the breeze created by passing trucks overhead. Their faces were dirty, their eyes reflecting our phone lights. In the center of the camp was a folding lawn chair, facing away from us. Someone was sitting in it. "Hello?" Jake called out, his voice cracking slightly. No response. "We don't want any trouble," Connor added. "Just looking around." The figure in the chair didn't move. I took a step closer, my light aimed at the back of the chair. I could see the person's shoulders, the back of their head. They were wearing something with bright colors. "Hey," I said, louder this time. "You okay?" Slowly, the figure stood up. They were tall, over 6 feet. Then they turned around. It was a clown, but not a costume. This was someone who'd transformed themselves. The makeup was crude, smeared directly onto scarred and damaged skin. The red smile wasn't painted on it, was cut into his face, healed over time into a permanent grin. His eyes were wide, unblinking, sunken deep into his skull. The hair was real, dyed in patches of faded color. The suit he wore was filthy, stained with things I didn't want to identify. He didn't say anything. He just stared at us. For a moment, none of us moved. Then Jake whispered, "We need to go." We backed away slowly at first, then turned and scrambled up the embankment. I could hear Connor behind me, breathing hard, nearly tripping on the rocks. When we reached the top, I looked back. The clown was standing at the bottom, still staring up at us. He didn't follow, didn't shout, just watched. We reported it to the police the next day. They went down to investigate and found the camp. The dolls, the fabric, the kiddie pool, all of it. But no clown. The officers told us it was abandoned, probably set up by someone with mental health issues who had since moved on. But every few months, someone in town reports seeing him, standing on an overpass, looking down at traffic, walking along the shoulder of the highway at night, sitting in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven, staring at the entrance, always just watching, never approaching, never speaking. 3 years ago, I moved to Pittsburgh for work. Jake stayed in town, got married, had 2 kids. Connor moved to Ohio. We don't talk much anymore, but we have a group chat we rarely use. Last week, Jake sent a message with a video file attached. "You guys need to see this." It was doorbell camera footage from his house. Timestamp, 3:17 a.m. The video showed his front yard, dimly lit by a streetlight. For a few seconds, nothing happens. Then a figure walks into frame from the left. It stops at the end of his driveway. A clown. The same clown. 15 years later, and I recognized him immediately. The same face, the same posture. He stood there for 2 minutes, staring at Jake's house. Then he turned and walked out of frame. Jake called the police. They searched the area. Found nothing. Connor and I both replied to the group chat. Neither of us knew what to say. What do you say when an urban legend you thought you escaped 15 years ago shows up on your friend's doorbell camera? Jake hasn't responded since. His wife posted on Facebook yesterday that they're thinking about moving. I don't blame them, because the truth is, I've been thinking about it too. Not because I've seen him, but because I know he's still out there, still watching, and I don't know if he remembers us, but I remember him. Some legends never die. They just wait. If you ever hear about a clown living under a bridge in your town, maybe don't go looking. Because some things are better left as stories.